Hello and welcome to the Empowered Learning Podcast. This is your host, Andy Bennetts. On today's episode, we welcome my good friend, Lieutenant Colonel Frank Barrow. Colonel Barrow is a distinguished and highly decorated retired Lieutenant Colonel from the United States Army, serving 23 years. Lieutenant Colonel Barrow is the epitome of selfless service, having impacted thousands of students' lives during his 22 years in JROTC as an instructor and honored leader within the Army JROTC organization. Welcome, Colonel Barrow.
Hello, Colonel Barrow. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing outstanding. Glad to be here.
I appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, so I appreciate you kind of finishing your day off with me. It's much appreciated.
Well, you're right. I am a pretty busy guy. I've got a few more months left in the saddle, but yeah, it's been very busy as we get ready for our summer programs and also to finish the semester. We've got a lot going on in our program, particularly here in the Mobile County JROTC district, where we stay very actively engaged. And that's okay. That's what we like to do for our students. That's why we're here.
I love it. I love it. And we'll get into this later on, but not only the JROTC, but you added a middle school component this last year, and that's probably even keeping you more busy than you were before.
That's an understatement, to be honest. But I am very pleased with the results of that program and the impact we're having on our middle schools. Our principals are coming back with a lot of laudatory comments about that, and we'll probably get in more detail about it. But it has been a lot of work to get it off the ground. Of course, you are instrumental in helping us do that, as you know. But I'm indebted to my colleagues out in Texas who also helped steer us in the right direction, and we made sure that we were going to get off and do that program right. And we used the term Leadership Officer Training Corps as a middle school version of JROTC in essence.
Right. I love it. Yeah, we'll definitely dive into that a little bit more. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, JROTC and everything. But before we dive into all of that, for those that maybe don't know you as well as I do, we've known each other for a few years. Just give us a little bit of a background of, your upbringing, your service in the military, and your work in JROTC.
Well, I'm a very blessed guy. I was blessed to have two great parents. I was born in Germany. My mother's a German World War II survivor, and my dad, I accused him sometime of pulling a child off the street there in Frankfurt, Germany, when he was stationed there as an airman with the United States Air Force. But born in Wiesbaden, shortly thereafter, we came back to the United States, and my dad went home to Crestview, Florida. He used the GI Bill to go. Now he was he survived the Great Depression, grew up pretty poor. Very poor, in fact, but he used the GI Bill to advance his state in life. And of course, that was a good role model for me in terms of educational pursuits. Right. Went to Florida State University, worked all the way up through bachelor's, master's, and PhD, and came to the University of South Alabama here in Mobile, Alabama. So we moved here as a family. We added my sister along the way. And so from the third grade on, I was here in Mobile, Alabama, and attended all public schools. I went up through the ranks, and this school district did me well. I can say that the Mobile County public school system was very good to me. The teachers I still know, and some of whom are still here around, that I compliment all the time for what they did for me. Went on to South Alabama, 4-year scholarship with the Army. Never planned to stay in the Army. Promised my wife I was going to get out and go to law school. Obviously, I did not make that happen. Right. But got into the service, and probably when I got to the 82nd Airborne Division, I realized I really liked soldiering. Stayed in the Army for 22 and a half years, but then came back home and was able to come back home and was offered an opportunity to teach junior ROTC. Now, our junior ROTC means a lot to me. I had an instructor by the name of First Sergeant Thomas O. Rutherford, who gave me a lot of guidance. I was a very shy young person, a little timid about things, but he saw something in me that I didn't quite see in myself. And he helped me get a scholarship to South Alabama back then. And I'm deeply indebted to him for that opportunity. But because of that experience, the chance to come back home and teach JROTC was something I wanted to do. And I had the privilege of teaching for 11 years at John L. LaFleur High School here in Mobile. Probably the best 11 years of my life because of the impact I had directly on students. I know there's a big board behind me, a lot of photographs of my former students that I still stay in touch with, very, very many of them. Awesome. In fact, I'm going to promote to major this weekend one of my students who has earned the rank of major and will get promoted. So those types of things mean a lot. 11 years as an instructor, I was pulled up to the district level to be the supervisor for the entire district's JROTC programs. We have 12 immediately in the district and 3 others that are in my area that I'm responsible for. So JROTC is a big deal, and it's probably the best citizenship program in the country. I'm a huge supporter, and we have moved it. I'm pleased to say that my team has helped move JROTC from just being an elective that people could take to one that we're deeply committed to STEM, educational career opportunities, workforce development, and all those things are tied together. And I'm a huge advocate that we're more than just a little organization that can march around in circles well and shoot air rifles. We can still do that, but we are much, much more than that. Again, the premier citizenship program in the country.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, and honestly, that's how, so again, for those that are just listening and don't maybe know the backstory, that is how you and I got connected to the company that I now own, has been working with JROTC for 15, 20 years now. And Army was the first one to adopt the technology we had, and we've been working lock and step with them for years now. And then also developed a middle school program, which we'll talk about in a little bit as well. So as someone that did not know about JROTC, had nothing but respect for the military community and the impact and the everything that they do for our country, it has been just an honor to work alongside of retired military personnel that served their country in one way and now are giving back to the nation in form of touching and modeling and molding the future of our country through the JROTC program. So again, I'm kind of a vendor, but I'm hopefully seen as a partner in that effort of JROTC. But it is, I would completely agree with what you're saying right there. There is no other program that I'm aware of that makes a bigger impact on the lives of students and does more for our country than JROTC. So thanks to you, thanks to all of your colleagues. It's an amazing program.
We have some great Americans that continue to serve, just like you said. We still wear the uniform, but we're in a different capacity, and we're actually raising the next generation of citizens.
Right.
I want to stress that we're a citizenship program.
Right.
A lot of people have the misconception that we are recruiters for the military services. We are not. That being said, for those young men and women that choose to serve, well, certainly we're subject matter experts and can help guide them in those decisions should they want to do that. Right. And that's exactly what happened to me. And lo and behold, for the guy that thought he was going to do 4 years, well, it turned into it became a lifelong commitment. And as I may have mentioned earlier while we were off camera, I plan to retire at the end of this year.
Right.
22 and a half years in the Army and also 22 and a half years as a JROTC instructor. And I'm very proud of that. Would like to continue in that capacity, but I've got grandchildren now, and I've got a wife who has supported me throughout both of these careers. And it's time for me to give them some attention, but that's what I'm intending to do. But I think that we will have left this program in good shape. But we got some dedicated people across the country. And of course, you talked about what you do for us. What companies like you do is to help us deliver our product in a much more efficient manner. And so that's important too. And of course, we work together also with the JROTC Leadership Academy Bowl in Washington, D.C. Just tremendous opportunities for these kids. It's a lot of fun. And yet we're making a huge impact for these young people. The Lord knows they need it today.
Yes, they do.
The world in many ways is turned upside down for them. Certainly a lot different than what it was for me when I was their age. Sometimes they don't know what right looks like anymore because we're not certain who we are as a country right now. But this program helps give some of that stability and reinforces how this country works in terms of the freedoms we enjoy, how our republic works, how democratic principles work, and those kind of things. So they leave us hopefully better prepared to deal with these challenges that we are leaving them as they take on the responsibilities of the leadership roles of this country. It's very important. I hope that your listeners understand that this thing called democracy doesn't just live because it exists. It lives and continues because people believe it. And if we ever lose that notion, that's a dangerous thing for the world. and for us in particular as a country. So
right.
lots of challenges out there right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, well, and how fun is it that you were able to grow up in the Mobile County Public Schools, go in and serve, and then come back and be able to pour in a different way. You mentioned that your time in the school system, kind of made an indelible mark on you, and then now to be able to come back and do the same thing, both as an instructor and now as a leader in that space. I'm sure that that community, will see the impact of that commitment for years and years to come. So thank you very much for your service, sir.
So, and it's been, I consider it a blessing. I've been blessed in more ways than I deserve. So it's been very good. And that's exactly what I hope is the memory left, is that,
Right.
you gave back, and to be able to come back home and do that and pass on what was given to me by First Sergeant Rutherford and others along the way. So, yes.
Right. I think there's many words that we could use to explain or to describe, your impact on folks, but also just how you operate. And I think one of the words that comes to my mind is relationship. It warms my heart every time I see one of your Facebook posts of you running into a former cadet, and they're off changing the world, and they take the time to say, hey, thank you so much, Colonel Barrow, for what you did for me. And it's just it just lights up my heart to see all of those connections and to know that the impact that you made. And I think that board behind you there is a good representation of all of the people's lives that you've touched.
I tell everybody that when we hire people here, and when I have discussions with some of my colleagues, many of whom the Jerry Cheathams of the world, Richard Crossley, and so many others that we work with, you and I both. Relationships is what this business is all about, and also to be humble and to recognize. I think that to be in these positions is a privilege. We're given children from across our district, and the parents trust us to mentor and help guide them along the way, and that's a big responsibility. But you have to embrace it, and you also have to accept and earn their respect initially, because those, as you know, many of our children today face some unique challenges at home, and they're for you to develop a relationship was what's so key to breaking that shell so that they can relate back to you. And when you do that, not only do you have a hoop that they know that they can come to you and depend on you to help them with some of the challenges that they face. And again, we have to have the right attitude to accept that responsibility and be willing to do that. It also, there's another word that you can call it, that's love, L-O-V-E, love. If you love your students and they know it, it is a bond that's very difficult to break. And having that opportunity is pretty unique. The other day I was invited there's a new charter school here. It's a public charter school.
Okay. And
I was invited to come down and talk about establishing the National Defense Cadet Corps, which is an NDCC, as you are familiar, non-cost shared program. And as we were walking through the hall with the young lady that was asking the questions and wanted to learn more about it, I got stopped about every 50 feet by either a former student or a former colleague and so forth. That was, even I was a little bit stunned. She said, "My God, you know everybody over here." So I just, there, a lot of people are out there. And, when you do have a student who you haven't bumped into for 15 or so years, or I guess even up to 20 now, I've been going teaching for 22 years. That's quite a feeling that's inside of your heart. And it's not money. Money is not what drives me. And I think for most of our really solid instructors, it's not the money we're making. It's the impact that we're having, and that feeling when you get a student to come back and say, "Hey, you really made a difference." And sometimes you don't even know that you did. It's just because you took the time to speak to them and ask how their day went, and to see or help them through a particular crisis. And they reach back to you many years later and say, "Hey, thank you." It's almost like God's work, is what I often say. It's very similar, and I embrace that very much.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with that. As teachers, we call them instructors, but we know the JROTC are teachers and instructors. They are touching, kiddos' lives. And too often they don't know, like you said, till years down the road. And I've actually this has been such a blessing for me to be able to do this podcast, because I get to connect with folks like you that, we talk, we work together, but we don't really ever get to heart matters that, drive us. I mean, this is really why we do the work that we're doing, and being able to offer the time and the space to give someone their flowers, to give them the chance to say, you know what, this really impacted me, and it made a big difference in my life. So that's amazing. Pairing off of that, the idea of relationships and not only caring but loving, and I understand that some people could pervert that, but I know your heart, and you do care deeply and love your students. I would imagine that in your time in JROTC and as a DAI now, you've run into many cadets that did not have, like you said at the very beginning, two loving parents. And I think that the impact that not having that foundation in which to grow from cannot be understated. And again, just kudos to those teachers and those instructors out there that serve as that surrogate and serve as that person that they didn't have, but they can look back and say, because of what Colonel Barrow taught me and was behind me the entire time, I was able to overcome, and I was able to see a brighter future. So you have any stories that just come to mind as far as just one that didn't have that good upbringing, sure, that you and I were fortunate to have, that just made a huge impact on your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And the one that comes to mind is a young lady that this Saturday I'll be promoting to major, and her name is Mia. And Mia was just an outstanding. Let me grab something here.
Okay.
This is her. She gave me this several years ago. And again, you can see where she refers to me as Dad. And I'm not alone in that. There are many of our instructors who get called Dad and Mom, or as you get older, Grandpa and Grandma. And in her particular case, she arrived in our school at LaFleur High School. Her mother had some challenges in life, and she moved abruptly from New Jersey. And anytime I had a student that came in under odd circumstances, I would always spend a few minutes to try and get to know what drove this mid-year entry and so forth.
Right.
And in her case, it was sudden. She came from Jersey, now really out of her element here in Alabama, and she was just a beautiful young child. And I asked her, I said, "Well, tell me about your mom. Tell me about your dad." With regard to her father, she said, "Colonel Barrow, I've never met my dad, never seen him in my entire life." I said, "Okay, I understand that, but we're going to get through high school together, and let's move forward," like I did all the kids in there.
Right.
And over the years, she continued to blossom, and she went on to she really was a self-made person with a little guidance and nudges from those of us that cared about her. And she went on to Mary Military Institute. She earned a commission.
Wow.
What was interesting about that is she struggled with land navigation, and she came back. She did not make it through the camp at Fort Lewis, Washington the first time around. And she came back. She was very upset. Of course, she can't get commission without that. And I said, "Well, all right, land navigation, I know a lot about that." So I took her out to one of our local state parks, gave her a map, compass, gave her a little guidance, and said, "I'll see you in a couple hours." And she still brings it up. Finally made it back to me all muddied up. But I convinced the instructor that she had in Marion to send her back. They did, and she was commissioned at camp. So that was a start. That was a big start. Later, she came to me. She went to South Alabama. She had to pay her way through school. She worked at the Great American Cookie Shop in the mall. Managed to finish her degree, and then go on and get a job in social networking, social services. Then she decided to ask for an active duty position with the Alabama Guard. She did, got it. And what was more remarkable, she was always hoping to find the right man in her life, and she did. A young airman who was close to retiring from the Air Force. And she came to me and said, "I will only marry this guy," because he did ask her if you approve. And she came back, and to his credit, he came in my office, and I did. I thought he was a great kid. And they got married, and I had a chance to walk that girl down the aisle.
That's awesome.
And I can tell you that story is replicated by hundreds of instructors across America in JROTC, because we care about these kids who don't have someone who cares about them and loves them and gives them direction. And that's really what we're good at doing.
Right.
So I'm very proud of her and look forward to this weekend. Spending some time with her and her husband and putting on that oak leaf to major for her.
So cool.
So, totally self-made in terms of her. When you give them direction and say, here's a pathway to it,
right.
And they kind of go get it. In the end, it's always they have to make those decisions to make it work. And all we do is just open up the possibilities. And that's and that role I take extremely seriously. And there are many others that I've had a positive impact on. There was another girl who lived with us for a couple of years who wound up homeless.
Wow.
My wife and I took her in, and she wound up going to service, and later on was discharged from the service under honorable conditions, but now has got a stable family life. So those things are important. And again, I think sometimes we're giving people in our lives that we can help influence in a positive direction. It can be done. Sometimes it's hard.
Right.
There's another young lady that I tried to help, but she did not succeed. She failed in a couple of areas with drug abuse and so forth. And so you have a lot of successes, and sometimes because when you love people and they fail, it's also very painful because it's like your own child. So it was a sad circumstance in that case, but for the most part, the majority of the students that I've been able to work with have had successful direction, and that makes me very happy for them.
Absolutely. And back to the opening statements just of the impact that the program makes. And I not to get too deep into this or political by any stretch of the imagination, but I have you here and you are an expert in this field. I know and that there are misconceptions in the country, in the media, about what JROTC is and what it stands for and the impact it has. What would you say to those people that have a distorted view of what JROTC is about? I mean, we just heard some amazing stories. I think that speaks of itself, but just take a second and just speak to those people that doubt or put JROTC in a box that it does not belong in. What are some misconceptions that you would like to clear up about the impact of the program?
Well, obviously, JROTC has had a black eye. There have been a few bad apples in JROTC, and they were predators and took advantage of some people that were under their tutelage. No different than the Catholic Church has gone through that. JROTC has gone through that. But that small, not even a full percentage point of the population gave us a little bit of a black eye in that regard. But I can tell you that the 99.9% of those instructors out in the field, both male and female, are extremely dedicated to these young people, because the biggest sin, I think, in America today is that we are wasting human potential, human capital. We know that we've got some great academic programs. Every school has great academic programs, and there's a certain percentage of those students that are going to do well academically. But there's the masses still need someone who's going to help them live what I call the American dream, because it's still there. But you've got to want to live it. What these kids don't know is, how do we get there from it? How do I take my circumstance and take advantage of opportunities and then build on that? And that's what JROTC does. We have an excellent curriculum. You know that. Our curriculum is great. We have a lot of different events that our students can participate in, from marksmanship to drilling ceremonies. We're involved in robotics. We're involved in drone competitions. We have land navigation skills, physical fitness, health, all those things. And so we can take, what's nice about JROTC is that, unlike a sports program, those coaches do similar things that we do, but it's a very narrow group of people. You have to be athletically inclined. Bands, for example, do the same thing. If you're not a musician, then their bandwidth is real small on who they can affect. In JROTC, we'll take a kid who has a IEP, or individual education plan, up to the valedictorian of the school. There's a place for every one of those students in between there. It can be a 504 student that has a physical disability, and we'll find a place for that student and then give them the same opportunity in terms of direction and guidance. And I think the misconception among those people that doubt who we are is that we're out to recruit for the military. And that is not our purpose. but I also say, and I'm not ashamed of the service that I gave to this country.
No.
And if someone comes to me, a student, and says, "Hey, I'd like to serve," then I'm going to be honest with them. If they're not physically able to do that, then I'll show them, well, to get there, here's what you got to do.
Right.
In some instances, you say, well, maybe you're not the right person for the military, but here's another pathway to meet with success in the business and the industrial world. So I would ask those people that are naysayers is please don't paint us all in one brush because of a few bad apples. And we are very ashamed of those bad apples. Don't think that I ever will endorse that. Those people should be in jail, and most of them have gone to jail.
Right.
But it's also a reflection of society. I mean, we're not the only ones. Look at any business, or those problems exist. That's human nature. We have, sadly, as humans, we have people that take advantage of others, and that's a very sad thing.
Right.
But the majority of us really care about our students, and now, and I'm also aware that there are some segments in America today, this divisiveness we're going through, that they, no matter what I say or what Mia Ankrum would say or others would say, they're not going to endorse the product we have. And that's okay. I can live with that too. But just know that I'm very proud of what we do. And I know for a fact that we have a tremendous impact on those people that we encounter, so many of whom come from disadvantaged backgrounds.
Right.
And somebody better love on these students, because if not, we won't have this democracy like we see it. If we keep putting out students or uneducated masses with no opportunity, well, what do you expect them to become? That's where your problems are going to arise. And so it's good for society that we exist where we do. It'd be nice to see us grow across the country even more.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I guess to that point of, it being seen as a recruiting thing, I'm unfortunately live in a community that does not have a JROTC program or a middle school leadership program. I would like nothing more than to offer that opportunity to my boys that are now in high school, because of the doors that it opens, and to that idea of recruiting. Again, because I work with these organizations, I know what they stand for. I know what the curriculum is. I know, I've spoken with thousands of instructors. It has opened my eyes, even not being in the program, of the advantages and the amazing opportunities that, if it's a good fit and if that's where the student wants to go, that the military can provide them, that other things can't. College is not for everybody. Trades is not for everybody. Military is not for everybody. But as schools, if we sing the one note of, like, if you don't go to college, you're a failure, then shame on us. There's so much more out there for kids, and military is a great option for many of them.
And now, a brief commercial from today's sponsor.
Hey guys, Andy Bennetts, owner and president of Interactive Learning. Our awesome little company has been around for close to 20 years now, and our core purpose and mission is to empower the future of education with innovative solutions through engaging technologies and leadership programs. We are blessed to work with a wide range of markets, including K-12, trades, corporate, and government. Interactive Learning is also proud to serve our nation's JROTC programs with over 3,000 units and 500,000 cadets. For our podcast listeners today, we have a special offer just for you. It's called our Class Tech Discovery Session. This is incredibly helpful for teachers, administrators, tech personnel, really anybody involved in helping students learn with technology. Here's what you get with the Class Tech Discovery Session. It starts with a short Zoom call. We'll talk about your class needs, your wants, desires, really your class wish list of ed tech. Then we'll touch on your timelines and budgets, plus any constraints that your district might be facing. Next, we'll look at new tech and new solutions, the latest and greatest out there that might be applicable to you and your district. And if you're interested, we'll even demonstrate these crazy cool, cutting-edge technologies just for you. Finally, we'll give you an idea of costs and professional development and how we and our team will support you moving forward. Again, that is Interactive Learning's Class Tech Discovery Session. Request your session now by texting Discovery to 970-739-2229 or emailing Discovery to Andy@intlrn.org. LOTC.com. Request your school's highly informative Class Tech Discovery Session today.
And now, back to the Empowered Learning Podcast.
One thing that, and you touched on it, and about college, something I was unaware, and I tended to be a person went through my military years while I was still active. You say, well, if you know, to go to college is a great thing. We should encourage everybody to do it, and it's not a bad thing to go to college. But we do have a problem in this country, and that is what you said earlier. There's so many of us that say if you don't go to college and get a 4-year degree, well, then you're not really as successful as others. That is the biggest lie in America. I'll be honest with you, and if there are any university types that are listening to me, you may be offended by what I say. Universities make money off of some of our students, and they take advantage of the poorest among us. And I say that because I learned so many of these kids here that you see on this board behind me went to 4-year institutions using Pell Grants and that thing called a federal loan. And they come back home either in debt up to their necks with a degree they can't use, or worse, they didn't get a degree and still come home with a significant debt load. And it's because universities do not counsel them properly when they give this money out. And there's a reason for that, because they don't have any skin in the game. They loan money that they don't own. And that is absolutely appalling to me. And I had children come when they were in college, they come to my home with tears in their eyes saying, how do I get out of this $70,000 to $100,000 debt? And I don't know what to do with a degree in something that the society can't use. Or you can get a job, but it will never repay that debt loan. So our universities are guilty of some of this, of not being honest with these young people. The best thing in America today, we have a huge skilled labor shortage, and there's money to be made out there. You can live the American dream, but we've got to encourage them to look at those opportunities. That's something we've done here with a STEM program I started, and it's tied directly to workforce development. We go into these great industries that exist right here in our community and show them here's a pathway should you want to do this. So I'm a big proponent for getting education, but also a proponent for setting our students up for success where they can earn an honest living. And we got to be honest with our students about that. And I hope our university officials take a hard look at what they've done to a large segment of society by this giant debt. And this is something that is a problem for America. Giant federal loan debt that we've allowed to be created, and universities have zero skin in that.
I saw a video a while back that I think it was 40 years ago, which doesn't seem like it's possible that 80s was 40 years ago, but the amount of inflation, right? So it said, here's a car that's a 200% increase. A house is 250% increase, whatever it is. All of them were in the hundreds of percents. And it even talked about, the average salary is up, maybe 180%. So not quite covering, but it is still, somewhat keeping up. The rate of increase in college education was in the thousands of percent. And to your point, how many of these careers can even pay back the loan that you're getting to do them? Don't get me started. It is frustrating, and I don't know how to. That's a systemic issue that I don't know exactly how to tackle. But regardless, I
think the only answer to that is that they have to be the ones that make the loan. And you're going to be a little more selective on it, and encourage people to go to your community colleges, encourage them to get degrees that are viable. And I'm all for education. If you want to be a philosopher, that's great. Just understand it doesn't pay well. But society, there's so many. My God, you look right here in Mobile, Alabama, for example, with our aviation industry, our maritime industry, our advanced manufacturing industry, they are screaming for workers, for skilled labor workers. And we, as a group, we've got to encourage our students to at least look at that. Don't force them to do it. That's not the American way. But to say here is another pathway, and to also recognize those careers as being just as good as any other career field that's
absolutely.
If we do that and change the mentality, I think it will be better for us as a country.
No, I completely agree. I think so much of it is the stigma, and I don't know whether that's pushed down from the higher education institutions. I remember as a high school student, the counseling office, whether they believed what they were saying or whether they were brainwashed into this mentality of, if you don't go to college, you are lesser than. I think that was prevalent 30, 40 years ago. I think it's changing, but I don't think it's there yet.
It is beginning to change here in our district, and I will give Alabama and our local districts credit for recognizing that there are so many opportunities, particularly in the career tech education side of the house, that we need to look at. And we're still going to need scientists and engineers and those college folks that are going to go out there and do great things. But be honest, it's really about being honest with our students is what it is. So I agree.
You'd mentioned that JROTC has not even pivoted, but has enhanced their program offerings with STEM, with cyber, with robotics, drones, CTE. You guys kind of fall under that area rather than just being kind of I say just, you know what I mean, the citizenship aspect of things. I guess talk to us a little bit about the CTE career pathways, how that filters down into the middle school and kind of the impact that those middle school programs have as well.
Yeah, we've always had a very good curriculum. I mean, when I grew up with JROTC, we did mostly Army type things and focused on leadership skills and so forth. And those were obviously it did me well.
Right.
But today, and I've been doing this for a long time now and have worked with many of the same colleagues that you know so well that have pushed us. I would argue that there are several of us that have helped do that paradigm shift. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that we must remain relevant to our school districts.
Absolutely.
And that's what always drove me when I looked at it and pushed real hard and had many exchanges with the U.S. Army Cadet Command. And it's a handful of us that really pushed hard to Bob Hivers of the world. I mentioned Jerry Cheatham, Richard out in Texas. We said we got to be relevant. If we're not relevant to that superintendent, those principals, then they're going to ask us eventually, why are you here?
Right.
Because if you can't, and with tight school budgets, I can't afford to have you if you're not helping me with my graduation rate, with my college and career readiness indicator rate, and those kind of things. So for me, I saw the writing on the wall. Another individual that was a big mentor to me as a DAI was Paul Willis. You might know Paul. He used to be my counterpart in Jackson, Mississippi. And he got it, and he helped influence me, and I ran with that hard. That led to what we currently have is a JROTC STEM Leadership Academy, and others like me are doing the same thing across the country. And so that pivot is taking place. I think Cadet Command recognizes it too, because they getting feedback from the field, from the ground up, they understood that relevance was so important. And then also Congress was beginning to say too, we need to start looking into the STEM world to see where you fit it, because there is a shortage of expertise in the country in those arenas as well. And so we've been pretty aggressive with that, and I think we have made a huge difference thus far in the way we're funding these programs in our respective districts.
Right. Nope. I love it. Would love to pivot and get your ideas on the middle school. Everybody calls it something different. I think your programs are adopting the LOTC moniker. So just a little bit of a setup, and then I'll let you kind of run with it. So ROTC, most people think of ROTC. Oh, that's they don't realize that that's a college program. JROTC, junior ROTC, is in our nation's high schools. We took it one step below that to the middle schools to help get those kids on the right path, looking to the future, so they have this pathway, like we were just talking about, from middle school to high school and then beyond, what that looks like. So Mobile County just started with, I think it was 7 programs this last year, and it sounds like they're doing phenomenal. So tell us about your, I guess, reason for bringing it on, the impact that it's had, and kind of the future of what you see for LOTC.
Well, I can't take credit for having the idea to implement this in Mobile County. It was actually kind of a funny story. As I mentioned, I'm looking forward to retirement and actually had planned to retire this past December. But in August of 2022, our deputy superintendent, Dr. Latisha Brackens, every year I have to give her a briefing to get approval for all of our plans for the school year. And at the end of that meeting, along with my immediate boss, Dr. William White, we're sitting there, and she said, "Colonel, that was a great briefing. I approve everything that you suggested and submitted." But then she says, "Tell me about these middle school programs that I've heard about." So So, well, yes, ma'am, I know about them. And Texas have an excellent set of programs across the state. They really embraced it. I think that it's going well. It uses retired or other military affiliated instructors. And I said, but other than that, I don't know that much about them.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me and said, "You're going to Texas." And she said, "My big boss, she's been on the job about 2 days, and you're going to go with him." So we flew out to San Antonio, and then later went down to Houston and met with, I mentioned Jerry Cheatham and our other DAI down there. Who was in Houston again?
Dr. McGee.
Yeah, old McGee. He's a great guy. And so those two, we visited those cities, and it was very impressive. Met with Sergeant Garden. He was also a big fan and helped shape a lot of what we're doing. But we came back, and she was initially looking at one school, but we recommended at least 4 because of the way it was set up in Texas, and that it's not punitive. It is also a character development program, and that it should be an elective, not something that we just put kids that have behavioral issues in. Came back and briefed her, and she said, "Colonel Brown, I love your briefing. It was outstanding. We're going to do 5."
Hmm.
2 weeks later, she goes to see the superintendent. She comes back, "Colonel Brown, the superintendent has approved everything. We're doing 7." Well, I nearly fainted because I knew who was going to be tasked with making this happen. And so she said, "All right, well, go make this happen for the next school year." And that is not an easy proposition to do. We had to create course codes for the state. We had to find instructors. We had to find a curriculum, which is where we came to your company that helped us with that, and all these different things. So, but I will give our district a lot of credit. They have worked extremely hard and funded this. The one caveat is that if we're going to do this, it's not going to be half measured. It needs to be fully funded, fully supported. That the district has to have skin in the game and be 100% supported by those 7 principals. And the district agreed to all those things. So we had to purchase uniforms. We had to buy curriculum. We had to purchase equipment and all these different things. And so far, the district has done all those things that I've asked them to do. We also hire some really outstanding instructors. It's a lot easier to hire them than it is JROTC instructors because they don't have to be retired. They can be active reservists, active National Guardsmen. They can be retired. They can be medically retired, and those kind of, or they can just have done some service and attained a certain grade level of rank-wise of E6 or better. So that's where we're at with it, and it's off and running. And our first semester was a tremendous success. We've got them involved also in drones competitions and VEX IQ competitions. They've been out in the woods to do a little navigation training. They're doing some drill and all these things. And the kids have responded in such a positive way because in middle school, there are not a lot of electives out there.
Right.
And this elective has been huge to them. And if you just saw some of the photos, and I guess you probably have seen these things in the past, but to see these little 6th and 7th and 8th graders, and some of them are real munchkins, doing a color guard at one of their high school or middle school basketball is not only very refreshing and rewarding to see, but the smiles on their faces is just really outstanding. So very, very proud of where the program has gone, and I hope that it's sustained. I think it will be based on the success we've enjoyed. I will say that it does take a lot of time because your attitude matters. Attitude matters, and the instructor we've had have positive attitudes, and my approach to them has always been positive as well. If there's something doesn't go quite perfectly, well, who cares? We're a pilot program. The other thing that I insisted on is that we don't do it for a year. I said it's got to be a minimum of 3 years so we can have some data to look at to see what the success truly is. Right. And the district agreed to that as well. So sometimes, and I know you've seen this in your relationship with education, very often we'll buy a program. We're going to invest $2 million in this fancy program. Somebody's going to come to our district, tell us how to do things, and it's going to be great. And then a year later, they throw it all out the window. And typically, what I find so interesting is oftentimes it's the people that come to sell you this product have been fired somewhere else, and now they're a consultant. They're doing it straight. So I didn't want that to happen where we bring people on and then a year later say, "Oh, this didn't turn out as good as I hoped." So, but we have been very pleased where we're at, and I think it's going to be a great thing for our students in Mobile County. And now the other principals are all begging, of course.
There you go.
I think the danger with that is every middle school principal now, well, I want one. Well, this office, I'm not sure that we can handle a lot because we're
Right.
a small group, but
Right.
we'll see where it goes. If that's the case, I'm sure the district will have to hire someone at the district level to help
Right.
manage.
Yep.
And right now it's just my program or my department.
Yeah, and I know that when Doug, you'd mentioned Sergeant Doug in San Antonio, when they got to that point where they expanded to 15, they did see the need for that because that's actually more than the JROTC programs that are in San Antonio. So you need a district coordinator at that point to be able to oversee that, to do it well. Yep, absolutely.
I've got someone up here that's helping me with this, but predominantly it's been my team's been we're doing because we recognize the importance of it.
Right.
And so success, I'm sure down the road, if it continues to grow, and I anticipate it will, we'll get some additional district support to help manage it. Because you've got, the position, the difference between what I did in the past in the classroom was there I was in military terms, I was in the direct fight every day. We were directly involved with our constituents, our students. In this job, it's mostly resourcing, finding the proper teaching staff to get the job done, and to look out strategically. Where's your program going to go? Are we going to go in a STEM direction? If so, how are we going to get there? What are the products that we want to do? How do we interact with workforce development? Those making business contacts with our business and industry partners. That's the kind of thing that this office does now.
Sure.
So, and it's gone pretty well. And fundraising, finding resources. Money you've got to have nothing is free. For programs to excel, you've got to go find the dollars, and they're out there. You just have to beat them.
Right. Got to find them.
To use those resources and find them. So.
Right. For sure. Well, sir, I so appreciate your time. We could probably talk for longer here, but just to kind of keep, this somewhat brief here, let's kind of wrap up. We've got a few questions for you. One of them is a grab bag question, and then we have a few key questions that everybody gets. So I've not been able to ask this of anybody else thus far from our grab bags, but I would love to hear your thoughts of how do you think education has changed most from when you first started? And then the follow-up will be, how is it the same? So how has education changed, and how is it still the same?
In some ways, I think that we've gotten off course just a little bit in terms of not sticking to some of the basics. And I would like to see us get back to that. Now, the way students learn it's changed significantly, and so how we approach that is we have to adjust to the realities that we face, and so how the student learns and so forth. So, but I really would like to see us get back to some of the fundamentals of education and avoid some of those issues that create divisiveness, which is what I think we see as a country. But and the direction we're going, I think the nation's starting to realize that. I don't know a single teacher that doesn't enter this profession with good intent. I don't think I met any. I do know that some of the constraints and what the teachers are faced with in the classroom has changed, and it's made their job much more difficult.
Right.
I believe that if we can get back to a fair system of discipline for our students, because they need that in many instances, they don't have it from their home, so that those teachers that want to do well can excel. And again, I go back, every teacher that enters this profession does so with honest desire to be good at what they do. One thing we're doing here, for example, is we're collaborating on the way we do robotics, and we invite STEM teachers to help us with that, because so many of our JROTC instructors are not STEM background.
Sure.
But when I bring them in, they look at me and say, "You mean you'll fund this? You'll buy the stuff?" Well, man, I'll jump on that hard, because they want to do that. They have the same excitement about it that I do with our JROTC curriculum. And so that's fun. And that's true collaboration. And you've got JROTC and these math and science teachers who love the opportunity because they don't have the funding to do it on their own. So that's worked out very well for us. So I think, and the other last part of education to me is key, is it's got to be relevant to our current reality. What is it that we need to produce for these students so that they can meet with success? And if you can do that, then we'll continue to enjoy the many opportunities that are out there. And and have a great country.
Right.
When we don't, if we're not making that connection, then a child has no skill sets when they leave us. I always tell the students when I was teaching, when you turn 18, society no longer has to care about you. And that's a fact.
Wow.
When you turn 18 and you walk out these doors, society owes you nothing, because by law, we must offer you an education, right? That's just a fact. And if you don't take advantage, think about it. From 1 through 8, when you're from 1 year old to 18, that's the time that we give you some skill sets to at least have a pathway to meet with success. If we fail in that mission, then we are creating someone who has no real hope, because the pace of society today is so fast and changes so quickly that they'll never be able to grab on that rail and hold on.
Yep.
And we see that, you got people that, they didn't have any proper education, and they wonder why they can't make it working as a clerk at McDonald's. Well, it doesn't serve them well, and we got to make sure that we use these years wisely and give teachers an opportunity, a safe, disciplined environment where they can work in the classroom. So they can come around that way.
Yep, I completely agree. It's actually kind of ironic. I recorded an episode earlier today with a superintendent that has been, I think, a 2-time Colorado Superintendent of the Year, and one of his main points was relevancy. How are we relevant? How are we adapting and changing our education right now to fit needs now, not what we did when we were in school, or even what we were taught when we were going through college to become a teacher. It's changing so rapidly. We got to keep up with it.
Absolutely right.
Oh, I love it. All right, Colonel Barrow, 3 more questions for you. The key questions that all of our empowered learning guests get at the end. We thank you again so much for your heart and your expertise and your time and everything for this. So question number 1, who is the leader that you most admire and try to emulate?
Well, I had a great dad, and I told you about First Sergeant Rutherford. Those 2 men had a tremendous impact on my life. But in terms of a national leader, a person that I greatly admire is Abraham Lincoln. If you think about what that individual went through to save this country back in 1861 through 1865, what a remarkable, almost as if God picked that man to be in that position to keep this country where it was, and that is a unified country and to the end of slavery. And you think about that. I stress that with so many of my students that we are so blessed that war ended the way it did, because that was never a guaranteed outcome. Wow. And it certainly cost him dearly when you look at the photographs of Abraham Lincoln, but before the war and then at the end, just before he was assassinated, it really aged him tremendously. But thank God, because he, I think, was the sole individual that kept the political movement alive to end this horrible thing we had in our country called slavery. And so I greatly admire him for what he did for this nation.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think that's a perfect way to put it. He was the right leader at the right time. So
he was, absolutely.
Yeah, kind of crazy. Question number 2 for you, sir. What learning, I know you are a lifelong learner, what learning has most impacted you in the last year?
The learning that has most impacted me in the last year is a lot. I think it's been several years in the making, but it's the program that we have created here. I mentioned earlier this STEM program we offer in the summer, and the impact that it has for workforce development, and how that impacts our students. Many of the students that have attended these camps have gone on to meet with success to get hired by some of these companies. So that makes me feel pretty darn good. And I think you are aware that the Department of Defense funded us with a $6 million grant to continue that work and to replicate it at 10 different sites, or scale it out, to use an educational term, scale out this model. Or that Army JROTC requires us to conduct a JROTC Cadet Leadership Challenge, JCLC. It is a metric that we must do, and we are evaluated against that metric. We converted that into a hybrid model, which is called the JROTC STEM Leadership Academy, and it involves workforce development, and involves a very series of 3 STEM projects that relate to that particular workforce that we're studying, and still includes all of the traditional JCLC functions like rappelling and ground proofing and land navigation and leadership and physical fitness sports, those kind of things. So that, and to see it get replicated from across the country, from Savannah, Atlanta, all the way out to San Diego and spots in between. So we're very proud of that, and to see the Department of Defense fund us with that was absolutely a privilege and amazing for this little town called Mobile, Alabama, to have that impact. So we're excited about that.
That's amazing. I did not know that it had expanded. So that congratulations. That's wonderful to see that. We were talking about earlier the need for the change of relevancy and the focus on workforce readiness and that kind of stuff. And I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. So that's awesome.
The Cadet Command is also seeing that too. That's the good part, is that they recognize how this program can tie into that under the Career Tech umbrella, because it's a win-win for everybody.
Right.
That's probably the biggest thing that I've seen so far. Question number 3.
The question number 3, how would you empower learning for future generations? So before you answer, just kind of think of this from a number of different angles, right? You're a service member, you were an instructor, now you're a leader of instructors. You've got kids, you've got grandkids. So in that entire realm, what would you do to impact learning for future generations?
I'll approach it as an American.
Okay.
I think that's extremely important, that as we continue to educate our young people, is that we not detract from how important it is to be an American citizen and how blessed we are to have those opportunities. As well as I do, that over the last few years, there's been a lot of criticism of American and the values that we have. If we don't hold on to those values, those core values of freedom, of democracy, understanding how our republic works, that all of this education will be for naught. Because if this country were to cease to exist, and we would go through some severe suffering as a people. And I would like to see us become to focus on the fact that we are all Americans. If you're in this country, if you're an American first and foremost, I think that would help eliminate some of the divisiveness that we've seen. And to be honest with ourselves, America has never been a perfect country, and did not always, when we criticize some of the things that happened in the past, like slavery and those other some of the founding fathers and some of their shortfalls, that to recognize that yes, it wasn't perfect, but we always strive to become more perfect. And those of us that have been outside of this country, and you see other governments and the way how terrible things can be, we need to bear in mind that can happen to this country if we don't hold on to our core values. So the educational opportunities will be there if we can maintain what we have in terms of our way of life. And that to me is the most important thing to see us if we want to have another 100 years as a society. And a lot of people don't think that can go away, but in the classroom, I always used to ask my students about who was the biggest power at the end of the 19th century. Well, it was Great Britain. And today, the sun never set on the British Empire.
Right.
Well, today, in comparison, it's a powerful country, but it's a small country, and its impact is nothing compared to what it used to be.
Right.
And that can happen to America if we don't hold on to the values that we have always claimed to support as a republic. So.
Right. And I completely agree. And I think that people, I think we fool ourselves to think that it couldn't happen. I think we are either so full of ourselves or just not a student of history to realize how realistic that possibility is, that we oftentimes let our guard down or just have blinders on to the fact that if we don't steward this amazing gift that we have of being an American citizen and what we stand for, it will not last forever.
Exactly. So it's something to be cherished. I mean, I thank God every day that I was born here. And I think about so many of these. I look at the thousands of people that are trying to get here.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. And I would argue that the majority of them, they're sincere in their desire to want to come to this country. Now you can make arguments. Well, they want to come here for the values that we have. But if we pour water on those values and say, well, those really aren't important, and we lose them, then my God, what's the next step? Because it's not going to be pretty, in my judgment.
Yeah.
If we don't appreciate the freedoms, every time I can walk into a grocery store, just walk into any American grocery store and look at the opportunities that you can purchase practically anything that you want, and that is not true in most countries in the world, and that's because of this freedoms that we enjoy in the American lifestyle. So. Anyway, I'm a true believer that this country stands for good. The majority of Americans are good people and want to help others, and I'm feel the same way. We should be the beacon. I think one of our previous presidents said, a light on a hill. And again, it's sort of that goes back to those. I'm a Christian. Those Christian values that I hold, that we should treat people with respect. And be humble about it and be selfless servants. And if you can do that, I think you're a lot happier person. So,
I completely agree. Well, Colonel Barrow, this has been an absolute pleasure. I thank you so much for your time and for your for just sharing your heart. And what a cool opportunity to hear. Timing wise, I mean, we caught you right before you got to go and put that pin on your former cadet. We caught you right before you retired, and you're still in the fray at this point. So I sincerely thank you for your time and for your service and for all the impact that you've made. So thank you very much.
It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you. I hope I'll see you back in Washington, D.C. at the JLab conference.
Absolutely. So. And then back in Mobile. So we'll see you soon.
That's great. That's exactly right. You come back to see us. So take care, my friend, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
All right. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.